Hello everyone, Gilligan Kruger 0829 here, and welcome to the third and final day of my Batman movie series marathon review. Today we will be looking at the long-awaited threequel to the new Batman franchise, The Dark Knight Rises. That's right, 7 years ago, visionary filmmaker Christopher Nolan revived the Batman franchise from the grave with Batman Begins. Then, 3 years later, in 2008, he redefined not only superhero films, but the action genre entirely with The Dark Knight. Now, in 2012, he ends his retelling on the legendary superhero with a film that is drawn on anticipation, crowd gatherings, and in one case, a very tragic incidents. So obviously this film has got a lot going for it, and I'm here to give you my personal thoughts on it today. So, this is the final film I'm looking at for 2012 summer, at least the final superhero film anyway. This is The Dark Knight Rises. So this movie actually starts 8 years after The Dark Knight. As it turns out, organized crime is almost gone in Gotham, but it's at a price. Batman hasn't shown his face for 8 years, essentially, ever since he left Harvey Dent's death scene, and Bruce Wayne has essentially become a recluse in the rebuilt Wayne Manor. Everything's going fine and dandy until a speech Gordon wrote and was going to present, revealing the truth about Dent and Batman, is taken by the terrorist leader Bane, played by Tom Hardy. Gordon manages to escape this encounter, but is badly wounded, and with the help of patrolman John Blake, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he does manage to get Batman out in the open to fight Bane's forces. Unfortunately, while Batman is following a trail left by cat burglar Selina Kyle, played by Anne Hathaway, he encounters Bane. The terrorist leader attacks and heavily cripples Batman, and he is stuck in a lone, depressive state in a jail that seems almost impossible to escape. And the rest of the film centers around Batman recovering from his ultimate demons and leading a force of all that's good in Gotham against Bane forces in the ultimate battle that may ensue war on Gotham City. So, despite the fact that the opening weekend for this film isn't even over, the film has already drawn on controversy, though as we know, it's not on the film's tones itself. As for my thoughts on that incident, I'll come up with a video and put in this link, but we're talking about the movie itself. And I'm going to say that this movie almost, very close, almost lived up to my expectations, but did not reach them completely. And there's only one real problem I actually have with this movie, but like the problems in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, it's kind of a seed problem and leads to some other issues. The thing about this movie is, I think it tried a little bit too hard to be what the fans were expecting. It goes for this real epic sense, sort of like Dr. Zhivago or Lawrence of Arabia of superhero films. And because of that, there is a lot, and I mean a lot, going on in this movie. There are so many small subplots, like we have Batman trying to regain his courage, Bane's problems, Batman going through a financial crisis. We're linking it up to the League of Shadows and Ra's al Ghul, and it's paced in a very awkward way. To some cases, it's distracting. Like, all this is going on. Like, sometimes it's on one, it goes to the other, then you're going back to that one, then da-da-da-da-da-da. And yeah, for a film like this, that can be a bit of a problem at times. Now, to be completely fair to this film, maybe I'm being too harsh on it, but I have recognized the fault that this movie, I think, has the same fault that Return of the Jedi would have had 30 years ago. 29 years, but close enough. You see, this has to live up to a film that not only redefined its own genre, but surpassed a film that did it first. Like in this case, Dark Knight to Dark Knight Rises, Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi. And because of that, expectations are very, very high for Dark Knight Rises. Now, personally, for me, I did not think it was going to live up to, and yet alone beat, The Dark Knight, but there was a small bit of me hoping that it would do that, since I didn't think Dark Knight would be able to beat Batman Begins, but it surprised me, so I was hoping for that there. and just because of everything that was going on, I just couldn't sense that. Maybe it would be better on a second viewing, but that is my initial thoughts. Now, to all you Nolan fans who love the film and are getting ready to claw my throat out, let me just say right here, right now, that that's my only real problem. And everything else I have to say about this movie is appraisal. Like, for instance, first let me talk about the new characters, because I really like the way they molded into this story, especially the scene stealer in this movie, who, if you can believe it, was actually Anne Hathaway as Selina Kyle. Other than the obvious reasons, of course, I really liked the chemistry she and Batman had together, because they were very much similar and yet very different at the same time. Like, they have same motives and goals, they just have very different ways to pull them off. Like, in one scene they're fighting on top of a tower, and in the next they're literally trying to claw each other's throats out. And this, I just think, made her a very interesting character. Like, I hadn't known much about Catwoman before this, but I think Hathaway just did a very good job at this, and more so to the fact that, despite the fact that she is the female character and most likely the love interest, or that's what we kind of built her on to be, I never felt like it was forced. Like, I was a little bit worried, despite the fact that I love Anne Hathaway, I think she's a great actress, I was worried that this character would, for the most part, just be a way to bring Bruce Wayne out into the open as Batman again. And although they kind of do that, it's never really heavy emphasized. A character that's more trying to bring him out as Batman again is Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, John Blake, who I was very surprised in. I wasn't expecting much, but I think Blake did a very good job, because he kind of came off to me as sort of like a child that grew up loving Batman, and he was really determined. Like, I like the relationship between him and Batman, though we did, well, more so him and Bruce Wayne. I liked what we saw between Blake and Jim Gordon. All of that stuff really paid off, especially when you see what happens to him in the end, but I won't say anything other than that as to spoil the movie. So that was a real surprise. Both of those characters really surprised me, though, again, I really was shocked that Anne Hathaway stole the scene, despite the fact that she kind of disappeared in the second act. Don't know what was up with that, but the second act, of course, was more dominated by the film's villain, Bane, who I've got to say was a very menacing villain. At least more so than our last film interpretation of him. Now, to Batman and Robin's credit, it did make Bane as the whole luchador wrestler kind of look they had for him in the comic books, when in this film, they have this sort of breath mask, iron lung thing that kind of in a way reminds me of Darth Vader's breathing mask. And I heard a lot of fans were complaining on this, but a lot like the Lizard's appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man, I must say to all of you, guys, they're going for a more realistic approach. And personally, I like this look. I thought it was much more menacing than the whole wrestler thing. In fact, everything about Bane was very interesting, because Tom Hardy and Christopher Nolan made Bane not only strong, but a really smart sort of character. Like, this guy was actually very intelligent, because in the beginning of the movie, he abducts and then teams up with one of Bruce Wayne's business rivals, and that leads to the whole financial crisis that I was mentioning earlier in the film. And that was really intelligent, because he attacks a stock exchange about 15 or 20 minutes into the movie, and that kind of frames Batman for making a lot of investments, which ultimately kill his funds. And again, that was very interesting to do. And what I like the most about Bane, though, here's my biggest praise for him, is while a lot of people I heard were saying that he was supposed to be the Joker, and at times he was too much like the Joker, you must consider one thing. The Joker was meant to be Batman's equal. Bane in here is a character that can actually be too much for Batman, and I really liked it, because he gives a really crippling blow, and that's a pretty huge plot point halfway through this story, and that's what I liked. Let's put Batman out for a little while, and again, Bane did a very good job. Tom Hardy, Christopher Nolan did a great job in bringing this character out. I was really surprised because when I first heard that Bane was going to be the villain, I was saying, but I wanted the Riddler. But after seeing the movie, I wouldn't have it done anyway. So very good job with Bane. And aside from the characters, though, which I love the new ones, I have to amend to something I kind of said earlier on in the review, and that is, while there are a lot of subplots in this movie, and sometimes they are distracting, none of them I ever hated, or even disliked all that much. I really think they did work their way out. Like, there's a big thing that this movie actually links itself to both Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, which I was really surprised because most threequels, especially superhero films, tend to ignore that the first one existed and just try to go off of the second one. But this one didn't, because they actually have a lot of flashbacks from both Begins, actually especially from Begins and Dark Knight, and I really thought they were well placed in there. They really evoked a good sense of mood, though usually they were completely silent, and that was well placed. And we have this very interesting relationship to how Bane was connected to both Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows. But I will say nothing more than that for those of you who haven't seen the film. All I will say is it does lead to a very interesting plot twist towards the end. So that was very good to see that it still did care about both of the predecessors. And the final thing I really want to praise this film over is the ending, which I'm shocked to hear lots of people are disapproving of, because I really thought this was a powerful conclusion, almost as much to rival Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 from last year. Why? Because it closes out all the characters that we've grown accustomed to. We see what happens in the end with Bruce. We see what happens in the end with Alfred, Gordon, Fox, and even our new characters. I won't reveal which ones are around at the end because, again, that would be spoiling it. But I was actually really satisfied with it. And it also gives a little hint that there could be more to this, but it does feel like a very good conclusion, and we can always speculate what's going to go on later. And that's really why I was shocked, because when I first started hearing criticisms about this movie, that was the thing I was hearing the most hate on. But I really liked the ending to this film. It was really impressive, and it was one of the things that really stood out to this film for me. And it's because of that, the characters, and the way it linked to the predecessors, that does make this a very intense and very exciting film, and a very strong contender for one of my favorite films of the summer. So, like Transformers Dark of the Moon last year, I said many times this summer that this is the film I was most hyped for. And now that I've seen it, what are my thoughts on it? Well, yes, there are a lot of subplots, and at times this movie tries a little bit too hard to be an epic. But you know what? I really don't think I can hit it over the head that much for it, because the more I think about it, the more this helps this film. I mean, you can't hit a film that hard for trying to be something, especially a life-changing movie like this one is. And honestly, for the most part, I'm very impressed. It's the characters' ending and relationship to the predecessors, as I've already said before, that really stick this movie together. And even at 2 hours and 45 minutes long, I never felt like this film was too long. It's an engrossing, dark film that sums up one of the best trilogies of recent years, and perhaps the best superhero series of all time. Is it my favorite movie of the summer? No, that title still goes to The Avengers, but this is a very close second. In fact, if I watched this 2 or 3 times like I saw The Avengers, it may very well pass it. But as for now, a very high... Actually, you know what? I'm going to put it somewhere between 4.5 and 5 stars. Somewhere between there. Closer to 5, just because I liked it that much. And I really think this was a great way to end the franchise. And how this has shaped the genre is just... I don't know what else I can say without repeating myself, really, a lot like with the other Batman reviews, but I definitely recommend this film. I think if you've been looking up to it, if you're a big fan of the last two, if you're just a fan of Batman at all, I really think you'll enjoy this, because I did, and it's a very high recommendation. And that, folks, is the end of my 2012 Summer Series reviews. Thank you so much for watching. Comment, as always, tell me what you think, and if you have a series that's coming up in the next few months before the end of the year, give me a suggestion. As long as it's not Twilight. You can find all my movie reviews on my YouTube channel. If you have a movie you'd like me to review, comment on this video or on my channel. Subscribe if you like, and until next time, peace.